All right, guys, and we have reached lesson 36, the last simple solutions of the week. We're going to look at the 13 colonies, slavery, and the economy. We're going to talk very briefly about triangular trade today, so that's going to be kind of a lead-in to our unit. We're going to do a whole unit on that in the spring, okay? Slavery in the colonies began in Jamestown as early as 1619. This was a year before the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth. From that time on, slavery was an important part of the economy of the colonies. Some colonists used Native Americans for slave labor, but most slaves were taken from Africa. These Africans were either captured by Europeans or sold to Europeans by other Africans. The sale of African slaves to the Americas is known as the Atlantic slave trade. Most ships in the slave trade traveled along a triangular trade route. The three main points of the triangle were Europe, Africa, and the New World. The trip from Africa to the New World was called the Middle Passage. For the African slaves, the journey was perilous. They were shackled in chains and held in stifling corners in which they could barely breathe. Because of these harsh conditions, many slaves died during the trip. Slavery was a major part of the economy of the colonies. Plantation owners saw enormous profits because they had a huge labor force that they didn't have to pay. Though slavery existed in all of the colonies, it became most common in the southern colonies. This region was the most suitable for farming cash crops, and it therefore needed many field hands or farm workers. The southern colonies developed a strong economy and grew to rely more and more on slave labor. For many years, slavery would be a source of a great conflict. Okay, so number one, name the three main points of the slave trade triangular trade route. So up here, we have Europe, Africa, and the New World. We can also see that on our map here. So let's go ahead and write that in. And guys, when they say New World, we're talking about like North America, so what we now call the United States, the Caribbean, South America, that was considered the New World, okay? All right, number two, look at the map. Which letter best represents the Middle Passage? So the Middle Passage was that voyage from Africa to the New World, so taking those enslaved people from the western coast of Africa to the New World. So our answer here would be B. Which group arrived in the New World first? The answer here is African slaves. They were brought here about a year before the Pilgrims came to Plymouth. All right, 4 through 8, match each term with its description. A, the sale of African slaves in the Americas was called the Atlantic slave trade. The destination of the first African slaves in the Americas, that was Jamestown in 1619. How much people want a good, that is the demand. A tax on imports, you should have tariff. And for the last one, the journey slaves took from Africa to the Americas, you should have had the Middle Passage. Okay, so E, A, D, B, C. All right, guys, and the last section is more geography review. So it says that you can use your help pages. I sent home your help pages in your folders at the beginning of the year, so pull that out if you have it. Okay, so the first one, land surrounded by water on 3 sides. That is a peninsula, and Florida would be an example of a peninsula, has water on 3 sides. A swampy marsh area, that's going to be a bayou. Elevated land, which is flat on the top, is a plateau. A place where a river empties into a larger body of water is called a delta. And for the last one, a type of valley carved out of the earth by wind and rain, you should have put canyon. So for this one, guys, you should have had B, D, C, A, E. All right, friends. Thank you for doing Simple Solutions with me this week, and I hope that you have an awesome weekend.